So this is a theory I've thought about and liked for a long time, or it's more so an interpretation of character design, and how Vegeta's character design changing over the course of the series reflects his own internal growth as a character, or his changing views and values. There are a lot of things that you can attach this character design shift to, but I want to focus on the character design shift itself, why it feels intentional, and at the very least discuss what it may have meant. Even if it wasn't necessarily intentional, it may have been an accidental great piece of visual storytelling by Toriyama. Though I do want to get a couple things out of the way before we talk about it. The first is in-universe explanation and external meaning. So when you make a story, especially a fictional one, if there's a visual component to the story that you're telling, you want to use the visual component to help tell the story. So how do you do that without it feeling forced, obvious, and too on the nose, so that viewers don't go, oh, you're just saying that? You're just doing it? You're just like winking at the camera and saying, oh, look at this, he's doing the thing. How do you do it naturally? And that's with in-universe explanation for things that have a meaning beyond the pages of the story. We want to believe it exists. We want to believe the characters are making choices and actions that they're taking have a purpose behind them. So please, don't undercut any sort of external meaning you can gain from the story and what happens in it because some in-universe reason isn't exactly the external thing you're supposed to take away. That should be obvious, but apparently it's not in 2025. I also really want to be clear that while Toriyama was more famous for creating Dragon Ball, this revolutionary manga, he was also pretty damn famous for being one thing in particular: a damn good character designer. From Dragon Quest to Chrono Trigger to even Blue Dragon, and probably a bunch of other stuff that I'm not even thinking of, or possibly I'm not even aware of. Toriyama's designs were used for these franchises. So clearly, he is a talented and thoughtful character designer. That is undeniable at this point. So why would we assume that the character designs in his magnum opus have no significance to the story he's trying to tell? I just think it's a little far-fetched to believe that Toriyama didn't have something in mind when he was changing the clothing of characters, and I'll explain that in more detail a bit later into this. But let's start with Vegeta's first appearance, and that's his most alien look. He has a scouter on the side of his face, giving this future cybernetic technology that you don't understand sort of vibe. He's got the big shoulder pads, which are the biggest eye catch of the entire outfit. He's got the gloves on, these weird boots, and even these like thigh crotch pads that are the same as the shoulder pads, protecting his lower half. All on top of this blue spandex, and it's all just so alien, foreign. It looks kind of familiar to us because we're used to seeing it, but if you showed this to anyone who had no idea what Dragon Ball is, I think they could figure out that either this guy is from the future or he's an alien. I think it gets the point across really well. And that's all pretty damn important to keep in mind when we get to our next arc, the Frieza saga. This is where Vegeta first starts to strip away at the armor that he's wearing, sort of revealing his own vulnerability, some would say, or potentially turning him more towards the side of good or fighting for Earth and the Earthlings as time would go on. These pieces of armor coming off of his body, literally piece by piece, is important to help tell this story. And I'm not kidding when I say piece by piece. People don't realize this, thinking that when Vegeta first arrives on Namek, his armor is exactly the same as the Saiyan saga, but it isn't. His lower half is no longer covered in those extra shoulder pad-like shapes that are protecting his lower half. The armor is practically half the size that it used to be. A pretty big tell to show that he's stripping away at what he used to be, how Earth immediately causes a change in him. Now, I'm not saying he's a good guy here, but he is changing. And that's clear as the arc goes on. Eventually, the story gets to the point where Vegeta has to work with Krillin and Gohan on Namek to fight against Frieza and his forces, specifically the Ginyu Force. Of course, the Ginyu Force goes on to pummel Vegeta, specifically Recoome, until Goku arrives, Vegeta gets a Zenkai, and he gets his revenge, but he doesn't get revenge without taking serious damage to the armor that he was wearing the entire time on Namek. So, what does he do? He changes clothes. Luckily, they have extra armor on Frieza's ship, but for some reason, they don't have the armor that he was wearing in his size. So Vegeta is stuck in a new set of armor. Funnily enough, it's an older model, but it removes the shoulder pads. It makes it less alien. It's just basically an armor tunic over spandex without the giant shoulder pads, without the thigh guards and crotch guard. It's a completely different outfit. And now you may be thinking Toriyama just did that because it would be easier to draw than the shoulder pads. I would believe you if he didn't give the shoulder pad version to Gohan and Krillin instead. So in my mind, there's only really 3 options Toriyama had when writing this story. Remove Vegeta's shoulder pads and don't give any shoulder pads to Krillin and Gohan. That way it's easier to draw because the shoulder pads are a pain. But he didn't do that. He gave them to Krillin and Gohan. If he wanted Vegeta to keep his design, give Vegeta the same armor he had in the last fight. And it would be the same as what Krillin and Gohan are basically wearing. But he didn't do that. He gave him different armor. So the only third option is he intentionally changed Vegeta's design to show something, to reflect something, to show us that Vegeta working alongside Earthlings and even Goku is growth, it's change. It's something that Saiyan saga Vegeta likely wouldn't even do. Someone so cold-hearted he'd kill his partner and not care about another final member of his race perishing just before he arrived. I think it's something truly important to show Vegeta's change and growth over time. So let's move on to the Cell Saga. The first thing we need to get out of the way is casual Vegeta on Earth during the Cell Saga wears casual Earth clothes. And that's kind of fine. Whether you want to take it one of 2 ways, doesn't really matter, but both really work for this interpretation. The first is Vegeta casually existing on Earth in Earthling clothes is a sign of growth, and it's what happens in the story. I mean, Vegeta is literally spending over a year of his life on Earth without collecting the Dragon Balls, without going for immortality. He is currently the strongest person on Earth while Goku is away in space. There is nothing Goku could do at that moment if Vegeta decided he wanted to conquer the Earth, collect the Dragon Balls, and become immortal. But he doesn't do that. Is that not something that Namek Vegeta and Saiyan Saga, especially Vegeta, would have done? It 100% is. There's no android threat on the horizon at this point, don't forget. There's no future issue that he has to worry about. He even thinks Frieza is dead. So why not just conquer the Earth and move on with it? Move on with himself. Well, he didn't because he's starting to change. And I don't think that's that big of a stretch of an interpretation. The other, and probably more controversial interpretation to the people watching this video, is that combat outfits do just matter more than their casual outfits. Even Goku has casual outfits that don't really matter to his visual storytelling as much as his gis changing do. And most people can agree that Goku's gi changing over time is an intentional part of Dragon Ball's visual storytelling. So for Vegeta, I don't think either interpretation here is bad, but I do like the idea that casually, Vegeta is already kind of existing as an Earthling. He's settling down to some degree. He had a damn kid. So I don't think it's impossible to make that work. And I think anyone who says it doesn't is sort of missing the forest for the trees in terms of what this in theory or interpretation is about. Back to talking about his combat outfits though, his armor was made by Bulma. This is confirmed when she makes extra armor for everyone as they exit the Room of Spirit and Time and Goku and Gohan are about to go in, but the armor he arrives to fight androids 19 and 20 in was made by Bulma. This is notably a little different from the armor that Bulma gives everyone outside of the Room of Spirit and Time, because the boots are pure white at the beginning of the Cell Saga, but then they have the yellow striped tip things at the end half, but I don't think that really matters for this interpretation. If you can think of something, let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested to read it. The actual big thing to talk about here, and I see get brought up a lot during conversations about Vegeta's clothes having some sort of visual characterization relevance throughout the original manga, is Goku's statement before he goes into the Room of Spirit and Time. You see, Bulma brought them all these battle jackets to wear, and Piccolo is even offered one, but Piccolo is disgusted at the idea of wearing the armor of the Saiyans and Frieza's men. But Goku replies, "Oh, come on, they're just clothes." And people just love to use this one panel to discredit any sort of intentional visual storytelling. I mean, why blame them though? Toriyama put this line in his manga. Obviously, Toriyama was trying to tell us, and the fans at the time probably, hey, don't look too deep into what the characters are wearing, it doesn't really mean anything. And that would work great as a counter to this interpretation, especially to this interpretation being intentional, if it wasn't for just a few chapters later. Because remember, Goku and Gohan come out of the Room of Spirit and Time in their armor that's destroyed. And when they're about to change their clothes, Goku asks Mr. Popo for his gi back. But Trunks tells him, hey, I could get my mom to make you a new battle jacket. But Goku says no, he wants to fight as an Earthling. Clearly, these clothes mean something to Goku in the story itself. So we even have an in-universe explanation of the visual storytelling you're supposed to get when Goku fights in his Earthling gi. It's the same with Gohan asking for Piccolo's gi. It's visual storytelling for Gohan, but I'm not gonna get too deep into Gohan's visual storytelling in this video since we're focused on Vegeta, but know that this is clearly intentional, or else he would just keep them in the battle jackets. Or he would have never put the battle jackets on them to begin with. Or he would have kept Vegeta's armor with shoulder pads and the thigh pads and the crotch pad. It's showing progression. It's showing change. You could say at very least it's showing the passage of time, but I think it's way more nuanced than that because not everyone changes their clothes through the passage of time in a story. It usually means something when you change the character's design because it's kind of important to a character to have an established look that people are familiar with. So tampering with that in any way, well, that must mean something, at least to me. Another thing I wanted to address, because I've seen it talked about on things like Reddit posts and even tweets replying to me when I talk about this interpretation, is that Vegeta is even more evil in the Cell Saga than he is in the Frieza Saga. So why would he have positive character progression in his character design? He's just not more evil than he is in Namek. On Namek, Vegeta wipes out an entire village of Namekians, kills people that Goku said didn't need to be killed, and honestly is just a rat bastard. But like, come on guys, he's more evil on Namek. Just because he happened to be desperate enough to work alongside Goku, Gohan, and Krillin does not mean he wasn't evil as hell. Again, I said this earlier, but let me repeat myself just to be super clear. In the time skip, before Future Trunks arrives, before King Cold and Frieza touch down on Earth, Vegeta is the strongest person on the planet, knows about a dragon radar existing, and is able to hunt down the Dragon Balls, kill everyone on the planet, and get immortality. Something that Saiyan Saga and Namek Vegeta would do without even hesitating, is something that Vegeta doesn't even consider doing in the Cell Saga. He is an arrogant Saiyan prince in combat. That might even be why he still wears armor in combat while casually existing as an Earthling. But again, casually, he's an Earthling. He basically coexists with everybody. Dr. Briefs doesn't seem to hate him. He's hanging around everybody just about fine. The only person that gives a shit that Vegeta is still around is Ten Shinhan. And why wouldn't he? He watched Vegeta and Nappa butcher people. But again, Namek Vegeta is definitely more evil than Cell Saga Vegeta. I don't think this is close. While you may think he's more of an asshole in the Cell Saga, that's fine. Asshole is not evil, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. And this is the absolute final thing I want to say about the Cell Saga. This section had to be lengthy, I'm sorry about it, and it's because this outfit is reoccurring, but not in the main manga. You see, in the original manga, the Cell Saga armor exists during the Cell Saga, and that's it. After the Cell Saga, it's gone. Before the Cell Saga, it never existed. This armor is relegated to the Cell Saga in the original manga. So whenever you see it pop up somewhere else in additional Dragon Ball material, let's say, just remember this armor is literally only in one arc of the entire series before 2008. It's actually crazy. It's not in GT either, by the way. It's insane that this armor has become such a mainstay, considering, again, it just doesn't exist past this point. And that brings us to the roughly 100 final chapters of the original manga, the Buu Saga. Now, of course, Vegeta is still relatively casually existing as an Earthling in terms of the clothes that he's wearing, but when he's in combat, he's wearing a specific type of outfit. Armorless spandex. In the anime, Vegeta's combat outfit in the Buu Saga is a two-piece, but in the manga, it's actually a one-piece outfit. It's basically just a sleeveless version of the spandex that he wears under his armor. Again, literally just stripping away the armor from Vegeta and even taking away the embellishments like the long sleeves that seem kind of impractical from an Earthling sensibility where everyone's wearing sort of sleeveless or short sleeve shirts in their combat outfits. So it is a pretty big change. But this is probably the most contentious one when you talk about it online, because like I said earlier, people can't separate in-universe explanation from external meaning. My point being, oh, he can't wear armor in the tournament, so of course he's not wearing armor in this arc. And I guess you're technically right, but like if Toriyama wanted him to wear armor, he would have just put the armor on him. Like, he could have just had him slide it on before they go to fight Buu. Would that have taken more than like 2 seconds for him to do if he keeps it around at all times? He really cares about this armor? Or how about giving Vegeta the armor when his body gets remade? I mean, Enma could have just remade his armor and Vegeta says, oh, I feel better fighting in this or something along those lines. But Toriyama chooses not to do that. He sticks with the character design he made. I mean, even before the tournament, during the training sections of the manga, Vegeta is not wearing armor. Something he does in Dragon Ball Super pretty constantly is train in his armor. This wasn't really a thing in the original manga in general, but him training in his armor could have been a way to show, oh no, the armor is actually just off because of the tournament. But no, Toriyama doesn't do that because that's not the design he's going for. Unfortunately, we will never, ever know if this was anywhere remotely near intentional. But it does weirdly line up, doesn't it, as I'm explaining it? You're probably seeing little faults here and there. Maybe I'm not explaining it too well in certain areas, but I promise, people have thought about this a lot more than I have and for a lot longer. This was a very common interpretation before 2008, which I'll talk about more later, but first we should talk about End of Z. End of Z, of course, once again, Vegeta casually exists in these Earthling outfits. He's got the leather jacket and the normal pants when he's going to visit Goku and Goten to ask about the tournament. But at the tournament, something interesting happens. Why not just wear the Buu Saga outfit, right? Bulma can clearly make these spandex-like materials that the Saiyans and Frieza's men wore, so why not have Vegeta wear that again? Well, it's because we're visually showing he's more of an Earthling now than ever. Just like Goku said way before, his outfit represents that he's fighting for Earth and the Earthlings, and as an Earthling to some degree. So Vegeta's outfit being predominantly the clothes worn by Earthlings, with just the gloves as a reminder of where he came from, is a beautiful design to end the story of Dragon Ball and to end the character design story of this character. If Toriyama wanted him to be in the spandex to show that it really was just the fact that he couldn't wear his armor at the tournament, he would have done that. If Toriyama really wanted the spandex to be the long sleeve exact same, just without the armor, he could have did that in the Buu Saga. He could have kept the shoulder pads on Namek. He could have kept the shoulder pads in the Cell Saga. But he didn't do any of these things. He slowly and meticulously chipped away at Vegeta's external shell, chipped away at this character from the outside so we could better see who he is on the inside, and how on the inside, he's changing for the better. Now, I briefly have to touch on 2008 and Dragon Ball Super. Of course, in 2008, we had the Yo-Sung Goku special. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's just a little OVA reunion-style special that was done by Toei Animation. It was written to some degree by Toriyama. There was a manga version of it that was supervised by Toriyama. And so it's pretty widely considered canon. It introduces Radish Farmer Goku. It introduces the idea of Tarbal, both things that continue to exist in Dragon Ball Super. In this special, we find out that Vegeta thinks of his armor from the Cell Saga of all things as Saiyan nice attire, like classy clothing you should wear to a function like this party that they're having to celebrate the defeat of Majin Buu. And like, okay, I guess, but it doesn't really work with everything that came before it. Like he just randomly puts the armor back on. Okay, sure. And then Super, of course, has him go eventually to the Resurrection F outfit, but once again goes back to the armor. So he starts in the Cell Saga armor in Battle of Gods, changes into new armor for Resurrection F and the Universe 6 tournament, but goes back to the Cell Saga armor for Goku Black and the Tournament of Power. Then he wears the Buu Saga outfit for the beginning of Dragon Ball Super Broly before putting the armor back on for the main fight. And he wears that through the Moro arc until he wears Yardrak clothing while training before going back to the armor for the rest of the arc and through the beginning of the Granola arc. Then he ends that arc in his Buu Saga outfit that he wears in Superhero as well. But again, it's all over the place in terms of what he's wearing in any sort of combat situation in Super. It's so hard to get a read on what Toyotaro or Toriyama were trying to say with his outfits. Feels like they weren't really saying anything at all. And that's kind of a shame when the story was so strongly planted in character designs in the original run. So when it comes to these two things that had clear Toriyama involvement, what does that say for the theory or interpretation we've been talking about this entire video? Well, you could say that it possibly wasn't intentional. It's something fans came up with and it just happened to work pretty well until it didn't with modern material. You could say that it was changed for the sake of marketing, just like Goku's gi was changed for the sake of marketing seemingly, because they're both sort of at these ideal designs that people really think of and associate with the characters. And that's possible. Or it's simply something that Toriyama forgot he did intentionally, like he forgot about a lot of things he did intentionally in the original manga. Regardless of all of that, the The interpretations you have about the media and the fiction that you consume are valid. I want you to understand that. Sure, you would prefer if there is some level of grounding in the actual material so that your interpretation can make actual sense, but at the end of the day, guys, it's fiction. It's a story. Who really cares? Anyway, that's all I have to say. Have a good one.